South Carolina Real Estate Exam 1. Question 1. When a deed does not specify the type of estate being conveyed, it is generally presumed to transfer which of the following? Life estate, fee simple absolute, leasehold estate, future interest. A fee simple absolute is the highest and most complete form of ownership recognized by law. If a deed is silent on the specific duration or type of interest, it is legally assumed that the grantor intends to pass the entire bundle of rights to the buyer forever. Question 2. The rights of possession and control and enjoyment are collectively included in which of the following real estate concepts? Eminent domain, leasehold estate, bundle of rights, reversionary interest. The bundle of rights is the set of legal privileges that come with property ownership. These include the right to possess the land and control how it is used and enjoy the property without interference and dispose of it by sale or will. Question 3. Alicia deeds property to Bernice and her heirs with the condition that if Bernice leaves no heirs, the property goes to Cynthia. What does Cynthia hold? Fee simple absolute, life estate, leasehold estate, remainder estate. Cynthia holds a remainder estate. This is a future interest in the property that becomes active only after the previous interest ends. Because Cynthia is a third party who receives the property after Bernice, it is a remainder interest. Question 4. If a deed states that a property is given to Jonathan for his life, what type of interest does the original grantor retain? Fee simple absolute, life estate, leasehold estate, reversionary interest. When a life estate is created, the grantor still holds an interest. Once the life tenant dies, the property returns to the grantor or their heirs. This right to have the property come back is called a reversionary interest. Question 5. Which of the following is an example of a less than freehold estate? Fee simple absolute, life estate, leasehold estate, fee simple determinable. A leasehold estate is a non-freehold interest. It provides the right to possess and use the property for a specific period of time, but it does not convey actual ownership. The owner of a leasehold is technically a tenant rather than an owner. Question 6. What is the term used to describe the return of land to the grantor or their heirs when a specific grant period has ended? Escheat, reversion, eminent domain, condemnation. Reversion occurs when a lower interest estate like a life estate expires. The legal title reverts or flies back to the original owner, who is the grantor. This happens automatically by operation of law. Question 7. An estate in land that is vested in a grantee until she marries is properly classified as what? Fee simple absolute, life estate, fee simple determinable, leasehold estate. A fee simple determinable is an ownership interest that is subject to a specific condition. If the condition is met, such as the grantee getting married, the estate automatically ends and returns to the grantor. Question 8. In the administration of a deceased person's estate, who typically has the authority to select the administrator? The family members, the attorney, the court, the executor. If a person dies without a will, or if the named executor cannot serve, the court will appoint an administrator. This individual is responsible for managing the assets and ensuring that debts are paid and the remaining property is distributed. Question 9. When a man dies without leaving a valid will, his death and the resulting estate process are referred to as what? Intestate, testate, probate, trustee. To die intestate means to pass away without a legal will. In this situation, the state laws of intestacy will determine exactly how the property and assets are divided among surviving relatives. Question 10. A farmer sold land to a railroad company on the condition that it remains a rail line. If the line is abandoned, the property returns to the farmer. This is a fee simple estate, life estate, leasehold estate, defeasible estate. A defeasible estate is an ownership interest that can be voided or defeated if a specific event occurs. Because the railroad's ownership is tied to the continued use of the land as a rail line, it is a qualified or defeasible fee. Question 11. To clarify questions about a physical encroachment on a property line, a licensee should advise the client to contact which office? Local zoning department, county recorder, surveyor's office, title insurance company. A surveyor's office uses precise tools and legal descriptions to determine exact property boundaries. If a fence or building is suspected of crossing a line, a professional land survey is the only definitive way to prove an encroachment exists. Question 12. Which of the following items is the best example of personal property, also known as a chattel? A house, a car, the land, a building fixture. Personal property is generally defined as anything that is movable and not permanently attached to the land. A car is a classic example of a chattel. Real property includes the land and everything fixed to it, like houses or trees. Question 13. What is the best definition of real property in a legal sense? Personal belongings, intellectual property, land and everything permanently attached to it, financial assets. Real property encompasses the physical surface of the earth and the space above it and the minerals below it. It also includes all man-made improvements like buildings and fences that are intended to be permanent. Question 14. In the context of a real estate fixture, what is the most significant factor used by a court to determine its status? The age of the item, the market value, the method of attachment, the size of the item. The method of attachment describes how an item is fixed to the property. If removing the item would cause permanent damage to the structure, or if it is integrated into the electrical or plumbing systems, it is usually legally classified as a fixture. Question 15. Which term refers to property that is situated specifically along a coastline of an ocean or a large lake? Riparian property, mountainous property, littoral property. Littoral rights refer to land bordering large navigable bodies of water like oceans or seas. This is different from riparian rights, which refer to land bordering flowing water like rivers or streams. Question 16. What is the term for the appropriation of land by a private owner for public use, such as streets in a new subdivision? Easement, encroachment, dedication, abandonment. Dedication is the voluntary transfer of private land to the government for public use. This is common when developers finish building the streets and sidewalks in a neighborhood and turn over the maintenance to the city. Question 17. When a stream suddenly changes its course and removes land from one owner, the event is called what? Erosion, accretion, avulsion, alluvion. Avulsion is a sudden and violent act of nature that causes a perceptible change in the land. This is different from erosion, which is a slow and gradual process. Avulsion usually does not result in an immediate change in the legal boundary line. Question 18. What must a landowner provide when selling a 1-acre farm to ensure the transaction is legally valid? A building permit, updated tax records, an environmental report, a valid legal description. A valid legal description is a mandatory requirement for a deed. It must be specific enough that a competent surveyor could locate the exact boundaries of the land. Without a clear description, the transfer of title is not enforceable. Question 19. What is the term for a right or privilege or improvement that is inherent to a property and transfers automatically with the title? Easement, encumbrance, fixture, appurtenance. An appurtenance is something that belongs to the land and is passed on to the new owner. Common examples include easements for access and parking spaces in a condominium, or even certain water rights. Question 20. How are crops that require annual planting and labor like corn or wheat categorized in real estate? Perennial crops, annual crops or emblements, orchards, vineyards. Annual crops produced by the labor of a tenant are called emblements. These are considered personal property. A tenant or seller usually has the right to return and harvest these crops even after their interest in the land has ended. Question 21. If a man dies testate and leaves all property to his son but his wife claims an elective share, how is the property distributed? Entirely to the son, partially to the son and partially to the wife, entirely to the wife, based on court discretion. An elective share is a legal protection for a surviving spouse. It prevents a person from being completely disinherited by a will. The wife is entitled to her legal percentage and the remainder goes to the son as requested in the will. Question 22. What is the term for a man who creates and executes a valid legal will? Testator, beneficiary, executor, legatee. A testator is the person who makes a will. A person who dies with a valid will is said to have died testate. This ensures that their specific wishes for the distribution of their assets are followed after their death. Question 23. Which of the following describes the secondary mortgage market? Lenders dealing with first-time buyers, brokers helping neighbors find loans, government entities and investors buying existing loans, the market for high-interest payday loans. The secondary market provides liquidity to the banking system. Entities like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac purchase large blocks of existing mortgages from primary lenders. This gives banks fresh cash to make new loans to consumers. Question 24. What does the term probate refer to in a legal and real estate context? The process of appraising a house, a legal dispute between neighbors, the distribution of assets after death, a government tax assessment program. Probate is the formal judicial process used to prove the validity of a will and supervise the distribution of an estate. The court ensures that all debts are paid and that the title to real estate is properly transferred to the correct heirs. Question 25. What is a devise in the context of real estate and inheritance? A legal document for personal property, the act of leaving real property to someone in a will, a type of mortgage for commercial land, a property tax assessment program. A devise is a gift of real property through a last will and testament. The person who receives the real estate is called the devisee. This is different from a bequest, which is a gift of personal property like cash or jewelry. Question 26. If a person dies intestate and no legal heirs or beneficiaries can be found, what is the process called when the property reverts to the state? Probate, foreclosure, eminent domain, escheat. Escheat is the power of the state to take ownership of property when an owner dies without a will and without any heirs. This prevents property from becoming abandoned or having a cloud on the title without a legal owner. Question 27. Which of the following documents is used to establish a legal interest in property without transferring ownership? Warranty deed, quit-claim deed, lease agreement, mortgage. A lease agreement creates a leasehold interest. This gives the tenant the right to possess and use the property for a set time, but the legal title and ownership remain with the landlord. Deeds and mortgages involve the transfer or pledging of ownership interests. Question 28. If a buyer defaults on a loan and the lender demands immediate repayment of the entire balance, which clause is being used? Momentum clause, exculpatory clause, acceleration clause, habendum clause. An acceleration clause is a standard protection for lenders. If the borrower violates the terms of the mortgage, the lender has the right to accelerate the maturity of the debt and demand the full amount due immediately. Question 29. What is the primary purpose of a party wall built on the property line between two joined buildings? It is owned by only one person. It is a common wall where both owners have an easement right. It is owned by the city. Either owner can remove it without permission. A party wall is shared by neighbors, such as in a townhouse. Each owner owns the half of the wall on their side and has an easement or right of support in the other half. Neither owner can destroy or significantly alter the wall without mutual consent. Question 30. What is the primary objective of the Uniform Commercial Code, also known as the UCC? regulating real estate sales, governing criminal trials, standardizing commercial and business transactions, establishing employment laws. The UCC was created to provide a consistent set of rules for business across all states. In real estate, it is most often encountered when dealing with the sale of business opportunities or the financing of personal property like trade fixtures. Question 31. In terms of economic concepts, what is utilized when a business owner chooses a shop location based on high highway traffic and drive-through options? Supply and demand, economies of scale, market segmentation, location advantage. Location advantage, also known as situs, is the economic preference for a specific geographical area. A business that relies on convenience and high visibility chooses its site based on how the location itself will attract more customers. Question 32. Which form of shared ownership specifically requires the four unities of title and time and interest in possession? Joint tenancy, tenancy in common, life estate, leasehold estate. Joint tenancy is characterized by the right of survivorship. To be valid, it must meet the four unities. This means all owners must take title at the same time and on the same document and have an equal percentage of interest and equal right to possess the whole property. Question 33. A city enacts a new zoning law that prohibits buildings taller than 6 stories in an area where they were previously allowed. This is called non-conforming use, a variance, spot zoning, down zoning. Down zoning occurs when a municipality changes the zoning to a less intensive use. This often happens when moving from commercial to residential, or as in this case, restricting the height and density of buildings to preserve the character of an area. Question 34. What is a provision in a mortgage that allows a lender to demand full repayment if the owner sells the property? Liquidation clause, due on sale provision, lender rebate provision, transfer clause. The due on sale clause or alienation clause protects the lender. It prevents a buyer from assuming the seller's existing low interest rate loan. If the title is transferred, the entire loan balance must be paid off immediately. Question 35. What is the name of the chart that shows exactly how much of each monthly mortgage payment is applied to interest and principal? Amortization schedule, mortgage division chart, loan expiration schedule, interest to principal chart. An amortization schedule is a line-by-line breakdown of a loan over its entire term. In the early years, most of the payment goes toward interest. As the balance decreases, a larger portion of the monthly payment is applied to the principal. Question 36. What is the legal term for an improvement that illegally crosses over the boundary line of a neighboring property? Embankment, encroachment, delineation, easement. An encroachment is a physical intrusion onto another person's land. Examples include a driveway or a roof eave or a fence built on the wrong side of the property line. These create a cloud on the title and should be resolved before a sale. Question 37. In a general partnership, how is the liability for business debts and obligations distributed among the partners? Each partner is responsible for 10%. Partners have no personal liability. All partners share equal and unlimited personal liability. Only the managing partner is liable. General partnerships do not offer the same liability protection as corporations. Every partner is personally responsible for the full amount of any debt or legal judgment against the business. This means their personal assets like their home or car can be used to pay business creditors. Question 38. For a $25,000 loan with a 30-year term and an interest rate of 9%, what would be the first month's interest payment? $56.25, $187.50, $87, $17.25. To find the interest for 1 month, you take the $25,000 balance and multiply it by the 9% annual rate. This gives $2,250 of interest per year. Dividing that by 12 months results in exactly $187.50. Question 39. If a grantor signs a deed on Saturday but does not deliver it to the grantee until Sunday, when does legal title transfer? On Saturday when it was signed. On Sunday when it was delivered. Never, because it was not signed and delivered the same day. Legal title only transfers when the deed is recorded. A deed is not effective until it is delivered and accepted. While signing the document is a requirement, the actual transfer of legal title only happens the moment the grantor hands the deed to the grantee or their agent.